Growing up, my sister Lily and I were inseparable. We shared everything: secrets, dreams, and even the occasional pair of shoes. Our parents often joked that we were two halves of the same whole. We had a bond that felt unbreakable, forged through years of shared experiences and mutual support. But that all changed the day her marriage crumbled. It was a sunny afternoon when I received the call. "You need to come over." Lily's voice trembled on the other end. I rushed to her house, my heart pounding with concern. When I arrived, I found her sitting on the couch, tears streaming down her face. Her husband, Mark, had just walked out, leaving her shattered and alone. The sight of her in such despair was heart-wrenching, and I immediately wrapped my arms around her, trying to provide comfort. In the days that followed, I did everything I could to support her. I cooked meals, listened to her vent, and even helped her pack up Mark's things. I thought I was being a good sister, but as the weeks turned into months, something shifted. Lily began to change, her grief morphing into anger and resentment. I noticed her mood swings, the way she would lash out over the smallest things. I tried to be patient, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. One evening, during a heated argument, she turned on me. "You're the reason he left. You always wanted to be the center of attention," she screamed, her eyes wild with pain. I was taken aback, my heart sinking. "What? That's not true," I protested, but she wouldn't listen. The accusation hung in the air like a dark cloud, suffocating me. I felt as if the ground had been pulled from beneath my feet. Our parents sided with her, convinced that I had somehow driven Mark away. I felt the walls closing in as they distanced themselves from me, believing Lily's accusations. The betrayal cut deep. I had always been her protector, and now I was the villain in her story. I could hardly comprehend how the sister I had loved and supported had turned against me so completely. As the months passed, the family dynamic shifted. I became the outcast, the black sheep. My parents' disappointment was palpable, and I could feel their judgment like a heavy weight on my shoulders. I tried to reach out, to explain my side, but every attempt was met with cold indifference. "Lily needs us right now," my mother would say, her voice firm. "You need to understand that." I felt abandoned, lost in a sea of isolation. The sister I had loved and supported had turned against me, and I was left to navigate the wreckage of our once close relationship alone. I spent countless nights lying awake, replaying the events in my mind, searching for a way to make sense of it all. The bond we had shared felt like a distant memory, replaced by a chasm of hurt and betrayal. In the end, I was left with a heart full of questions and a family that felt more like strangers. The love that had once filled our home was now overshadowed by anger and resentment. I had lost my sister, my family, and a part of myself in the process. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a long and painful journey. The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. I found myself living in a world where laughter had faded, replaced by the echo of my family's rejection. I tried to maintain my dignity, but the emotional trauma was suffocating. Each day felt like a battle, and I was losing ground. At family gatherings, I was a ghost. I watched as they shared stories, laughter ringing in the air, while I sat in silence, a mere observer of the life I once belonged to. My parents would glance at me occasionally, their expressions a mix of pity and disappointment. I felt like an outsider in my own family, a pariah in a place that had once felt like home. "Why don't you just apologize to Lily?" my father suggested one evening, his voice laced with frustration. "You need to make amends." His words stung, a reminder of how far I had fallen. "Apologize for what?" I shot back, my voice rising. "I didn't do anything wrong." But my protests fell on deaf ears. The family I had known was gone, replaced by a new reality where I was the scapegoat. In the solitude of my room, I cried. I missed my sister, the bond we had shared, and the love that had once filled our home. I tried to reach out to friends, but the isolation had taken its toll. I felt like a burden, and I didn't want to drag anyone else into my misery. I spent countless nights scrolling through social media, watching Lily's life unfold without me. Each post felt like a dagger. a reminder of what I had lost. As the years passed, I learned to cope. I threw myself into work, pouring my energy into my career. I made new friends, but the shadow of my family's betrayal lingered. I often found myself staring at old photos of Lily and me, memories of happier times that felt like a distant dream. I tried to forgive, to let go of the anger that simmered beneath the surface. But every time I thought of Lily's accusations, the pain resurfaced. I was trapped in a cycle of grief and resentment, struggling to find my way back to the light. I sought therapy, hoping to find some semblance of peace. My therapist encouraged me to express my feelings, to confront the pain head on. "You have every right to feel hurt," she said gently. "Your sister's actions were not your fault." I clung to her words, trying to believe them, but the scars ran deep, and healing felt like an uphill battle. As I navigated this new reality, I often wondered if I would ever hear from Lily again. Would she reach out? Or was our bond truly severed? I had learned to live without her, but a part of me still longed for reconciliation. I wanted to believe one day we could mend the rift that had torn us apart. But as time passed, hope began to fade, replaced by a sense of resignation. I was left with a heart full of questions and a family that felt more like strangers. Despite the pain, I found strength in my journey. I learned to embrace my independence, to find joy in the little things. I had survived the storm, and now it was time to rebuild. I focused on my career, my friendships, and my passions. I was determined to create a life that was fulfilling, even without the family I had once known. Years passed, and I slowly began to rebuild my life. I moved to a new city, seeking a fresh start away from the memories that haunted me. I found a job that I loved, surrounded by colleagues who became my new support system. They welcomed me with open arms, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of belonging. I learned to embrace my independence, finding joy in small victories. I took up painting, a passion I had long neglected, and poured my emotions onto the canvas. Each stroke was a release, a way to express the pain I had bottled up for so long. I found solace in the colors, a way to channel my feelings into something beautiful. But even as I flourished, the scars of my past remained. I often thought of Lily, wondering if she ever regretted her actions. Did she miss me? Did she realize the damage she had caused? I found myself scrolling through social media, searching for any sign of her. Each post felt like a reminder of the bond we had lost, a connection that had once defined us. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a post from Lily. She looked happy, her smile radiant as she posed with a new partner. A pang of jealousy shot through me, but I quickly pushed it aside. I had no right to feel that way. "Let it go," I whispered to myself, trying to silence the voice of resentment that crept in. I had worked hard to move on, and I refused to let her dictate my happiness any longer. I focused on my career, earning promotions and accolades. I made new friends who supported me, and I began to feel a sense of belonging again. I started volunteering at a local shelter, finding fulfillment in helping others. It was a way to give back, to find purpose in the midst of my pain. But the ache of family estrangement lingered, a reminder of the love I had lost. As I settled into my new life, I often wondered if I would ever hear from Lily again. Would she reach out, or was our bond truly severed? I had learned to live without her, but a part of me still longed for reconciliation. I wanted to believe that one day, we could mend the rift that had torn us apart. But as time passed, hope began to fade, replaced by a sense of resignation. I was left with a heart full of questions and a family that felt more like strangers. Despite the pain, I found strength in my journey. I learned to embrace my independence, to find joy in the little things. I had survived the storm, and now it was time to rebuild. I focused on my career, my friendships, and my passions. I was determined to create a life that was fulfilling, even without the family I had once known. It was an ordinary Tuesday when I received the email. The subject line read, "I need to explain." My heart raced as I opened it, recognizing Lily's name. A mix of emotions flooded over me: curiosity, anger, and a flicker of hope. "Dear Your Names," it began. "I know it's been years since we last spoke, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I need you to know the truth about what happened." My hands trembled as I read on, my breath catching in my throat. She detailed her struggles after the divorce, how she had felt lost and alone. But what struck me was the revelation that Mark had been unfaithful, and she had been too ashamed to admit it. "I blamed you because it was easier than facing the truth," she wrote. "I thought if I could convince everyone that you were the problem, it would somehow make my pain go away." Attached to the email were screenshots of conversations between Lily and Mark, revealing his betrayal. My heart raced as I scrolled through the evidence, each message a dagger to my heart. I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, and a strange sense of vindication. All those years of isolation, the pain of being abandoned, and now I had proof that I was innocent. But as the initial shock wore off, a new feeling emerged: a desire for revenge. I had spent years suffering in silence, and now I had the means to expose Lily's lies. The thought of ruining her life, of making her feel the pain she had inflicted on me, was intoxicating. I closed my laptop, my mind racing. This was my chance to reclaim my narrative, to show my family the truth. But as I plotted my next move, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, "Is this really what you want?" I spent the night tossing and turning, replaying the email in my mind. I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. Would my family believe me? Would they finally see Lily for who she truly was? The thought of finally being vindicated was tempting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that revenge might not bring the closure I sought. As the sun rose the next morning, I made a decision. I would gather my thoughts, compile the evidence, and confront my family with the truth. I wanted them to see the real story, to understand the pain I had endured. But deep down, I also knew that revenge could come with its own set of consequences. I was standing at a crossroads, and the path I chose would shape my future. The days that followed were a blur of planning and strategizing. I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't experienced in years. I was no longer the victim. I was the architect of my own fate. I started by gathering evidence, compiling everything I could find that would expose Lily's deception. I reached out to old family friends, discreetly asking questions about Mark and his infidelity. Each piece of information was a puzzle, and I was determined to put it all together. I crafted a detailed email, outlining the truth of what had happened. I included the screenshots from Lily's email, along with my own reflections on the years of pain I had endured. I wanted my family to see the full picture, to understand that I was not the villain in this story. I spent hours perfecting my message, ensuring that every detail was clear and concise. As I prepared to send the email, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. Would they believe me? Would they finally see Lily for who she truly was? I hit send, my heart racing as I watched the message disappear into the digital ether. I felt a rush of adrenaline, a sense of power I hadn't felt in years. But as the hours turned into days, I began to second-guess myself. Was this really the right thing to do? I had spent so long trying to heal, and now I was opening old wounds. I found myself pacing the floor, anxiety gnawing at my insides. What if this backfired? What if I lost my family for good? When the responses started coming in, I braced myself for the fallout. My parents were shocked, their disbelief palpable. "This can't be true," my mother wrote. "Lily would never lie to us." I felt a pang of frustration, but I pressed on, providing more evidence and context. I could feel the tide turning, the weight of the truth pressing down on them. As the days passed, I watched as my family grappled with the revelations. My mother called me, her voice trembling. "We need to talk," she said, her tone serious. I could sense the shift in her demeanor, the realization that perhaps they had been wrong. I felt a mix of triumph and guilt. I had wanted this, but at what cost? The confrontation with my family was intense. They were torn between their love for Lily and the truth that was unfolding before them. I could see the pain in their eyes. the struggle to reconcile their feelings. I had opened a Pandora's box and there was no going back. The fallout was swift and brutal. My family was torn apart as the truth about Lily's deception came to light. My parents struggled to reconcile their love for her with the betrayal they had uncovered. I watched as they confronted Lily, their disappointment evident. "How could you do this to your sister?" my father demanded, his voice shaking with anger. Lily's response was a mix of denial and anger. "You don't understand. I was hurting. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Her words felt hollow, a feeble attempt to justify her actions. I could see the cracks in her facade, the guilt that was beginning to seep through. But the damage was done. The family I had longed for was shattered, and I felt a strange sense of emptiness. I had achieved my revenge, but at what cost? As the dust settled, I found myself reflecting on the choices I had made. I had wanted to expose Lily, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. But now, I realized that revenge had not brought me the closure I had hoped for. I had opened old wounds, and the scars ran deeper than I had anticipated. I reached out to my parents, trying to mend the rift that had formed. "I'm sorry for everything," I said, my voice trembling. "I just wanted you to see the truth." They listened, their expressions softening as I shared my feelings of abandonment and hurt. Slowly, we began to rebuild our relationship, but the scars of betrayal lingered. As for Lily, she became a ghost in my life once more. I had ruined her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had lost a part of myself in the process. I had wanted to reclaim my narrative, but in doing so, I had sacrificed the love of my family. In the end, I learned that revenge may bring temporary satisfaction, but it often leaves a trail of destruction in its wake. I had reclaimed my narrative, but at the cost of my family's unity. As I moved forward, I vowed to focus on healing, to find peace within myself. I had survived the storm, and now it was time to rebuild once more. This time, with a heart open to forgiveness.